What's up everyone, Adam Sierpinski here, and for the third year in a row, I'm ending my year with a top 10 list of the best jazz records of the year. More specifically, the best jazz records that received a vinyl pressing this year. I make these lists because I want to shine a spotlight on the amazing new music that's being composed and recorded every year. I think too many people view jazz as a historical art form that had its best days 60 years ago, 70 years ago. But in my opinion, jazz is still thriving today. Maybe not economically, but certainly artistically, musically. Jazz is thriving today and it's as good as it's ever been. There are so many amazing records that should be in your collection that you should be listening to, and I want to suggest a couple of them to you. One thing I want to say before I dive into the list is that if I could, I would put these records on in the background so that you can hear them and get a sense for what they're all about as I talk. For copyright reasons, I can't do that. It would jeopardize my channel if I even tried. But what I can do is pull a Taylor Swift and re-record the stuff myself. So that's what I've done for this video here in my studio. I've got my keyboards here, drums right behind me. I did my best to re-record the songs from these records so that I could put something in the background and give you a hint of what the music sounds like. I did my best, but I'm not the player that these guys are on these records, so imagine something twice as good as what you're hearing, and then you'll have some idea of what these records are. I'm going to dive in now to a couple honorable mentions, and the first two that I want to talk about are two of my favorite trumpet records of the year. The first one is Peter Evans and Being and Becoming. The record is called Ars Memoria, and if you aren't familiar with Peter, he's probably the first truly great piccolo trumpet jazz musician that we've had. He is a virtuoso trumpet player, astonishing technique, and he's a great band leader as well. This is a really, really good group. I really enjoyed listening to this record. I think you should check it out. The next record that I want to highlight as an honorable mention is Ambroise Akinmusire, Beauty is Enough. This is a solo trumpet record, completely improvised, no other instruments on the record, and I just can't even imagine having the confidence in my trumpet playing to approach a record like that, to spend the money, to reserve a hall and an engineer, and to be confident that you could produce something this good on any given day. Ambroise did it. If you're a trumpet player, this is an essential album to have in your collection. If you're a fan of jazz music, it's still something that you should be considering buying. And the next one I want to talk about did not receive a vinyl pressing, but I do want to give a shout out to Darcy James Argue for his album Dynamic Maximum Tension. I've never had a big band record on my top 10 list, and that won't change this year because it's not on vinyl. But I just want to give a shout out because it's so hard to make a great big band record. It's so expensive to have a big band, to write a book of music for that many great musicians and to record it and all that. It doesn't happen very often. And so shout out to Darcy for doing it and making one of the best jazz records of the year with a big band. And lastly, I want to give a shout out to Trio Grande, who released one of my favorite records of the year. That one is on vinyl. I just haven't received it yet. I ordered my copy a long time ago and it just hasn't arrived yet. I listened to the digital version many times and it's one of the best records of the year, but I can't put it on a top 10 list if I haven't heard it on vinyl. So that's Trio Grande. And with that all out of the way, let's dive into the official top 10 list. And I have this organized just chronologically. So the first record that came out during 2023 that made my list is Christian McBride's New Dawn, Prime. Christian leads a few bands. This is my favorite of the bands that he leads because I love jazz music with no piano, no guitar. It frees the horn players up in such a clear way to get free harmonically, to focus a little bit more on melodic playing and not worry about stepping on anyone's toes with note choices. Josh Evans on trumpet, Marcus Strickland on tenor and bass clarinet. They are so creative in their improvising, and it's really tied together by two of the best pocket players, Christian McBride on bass and Nasheet Waits on drums. It really makes it a great record. Check this one out. The next record I have is by McBride Scott, who has been one of my favorite drummers for a very long time, and he's growing on me as one of the great composers around today. This particular record, Corridors, is all original. all original compositions. And he presented these compositions with just a trio, with Walter Smith on tenor, Reuben Rogers on bass. And that's a courageous way to present your tunes as a drummer, when people might assume that you aren't a great composer because you don't play a melodic instrument. To have the confidence that your tunes will speak for themselves because the melodies are so strong that they don't need a lush orchestration to feel like a fully realized composition. Really great record. One of the things I love about trio records in general is that you can really hear every note on the record. Just because of the way that they work in terms of frequency ranges, there's nothing competing with the cymbals. You can hear every cymbal stroke that he plays. The bass is isolated down low. You can hear every note that Reuben plays on the bass. And so it's just a great way to listen to music and really hear every note that everybody on the record played. So this is a great record. You should have it in your collection. Next, Cecile McLorin Salvant, Mélusine. I saw Cecile live this past year, and her performance was just captivating. I think she's a generational talent as a vocalist. And if we can talk about her voice as an instrument for a moment, I think as an instrumentalist, she is far beyond where most horn players are at, saxophone players, trumpet players. I think as horn players, we can improve what we do by listening to singers like her who have such control over pitch, over dynamics, over the timbre of her voice, over the speed of her vibrato on different notes, over phrasing in a way that floats over the rhythmic grid and sometimes locks in with the pocket. I think it's just such a fantastic vocal performance. That's why I've got it on my list. The band sounds good too. But anyway, there isn't a lot of improvising on this record. It's really about the songs. So for that reason, I hesitated to put it on the list, but I think just the quality of her singing forced me to include it. So that's this record. Next, one of the best bands in jazz music today is EmiS. I don't know if this is a collective or if Renee leads the band, but at any rate, they all contributed compositions to this record. In particular, I think Ingrid Jensen sticks out as one of the best trumpet players alive today. I'm a big fan of Alexa Tarantino. She's a great saxophone player, but for me personally, I'm learning the flute. I look to her as one of the best flute players alive today. And the band in general just plays so well together. The ensemble playing, unison melodies and so forth is very, very precise, perfectly in tune with one another, phrasing completely in unison. And then when it comes time to improvise, to still be able to let go of that and play so creatively and listen to one another and play in a very organic way. I think we might be underrating this band as one of the great bands around today. I hope they stay together and release more records soon. Next, Chris Potter, live at the Village Vanguard. This is Chris's second or maybe even third, at least his second Village Vanguard record. I'll be upfront and say that compositionally there's nothing special on this record. It's really just a record with great playing. And I apologize if you can hear my cat meowing at me. He wants this chair. Live at the Village Vanguard. It takes guts to do a Vanguard record. I think if you do a record at any other jazz club, it makes me wonder, did you record 30 dates at various jazz clubs and then pick the best? But there's only one Village Vanguard and you can only play there a week at a time. So you know that this band was just captured doing what they do night after night, which is playing inspiring music, really, really killing it. Marcus Gilmore on drums stands out in particular to me as one of the best drummers today. Fantastic record. Next, Jaimie Branch, Fly or Die World War. Sadly, Jaimie passed away. This is her final record. And it's a great record. Her trumpet playing is fantastic. I think it's a unique band with cello, with no chordal instrument, and with such a diverse amount of musical styles that they go after. There really isn't this coherent style throughout the record, but they tie it together with just the way that they interpret melodies and play freely together. It's a great record. I think you should check it out if you haven't. If you haven't heard her music before, you definitely should check it out. Next, we go to our second Live at the Village Vanguard record. And like Chris Potter, this is not Kurt Rosenwinkel's first Village Vanguard record. It's at least his second. The other one, the previous one with Mark Turner on tenor, is one of my favorites. This one is great too. One of the best rhythm sections in the business, with Aaron Parks on piano, Eric Rivas on bass, and Hutch on drums. Fantastic playing, great original tunes by Kurt. One of the best guitar players in the world for decades now. Must have. Next is Joshua Redman, Where Are We? This is a unique record for Joshua Redman in that he has a vocalist on every track, Gabriel Cavassa, who's a fantastic singer. And the end result is almost like it's a vocal record, but with better than normal arrangements and a better than normal band with great soloists. Obviously Joshua Redman being one of the great soloists is on every track. And I think we don't talk about Joshua Redman enough as one of the all-time great orchestrators for the jazz combo. Since the 90s, Timeless Tales for Changing Times sticks out in my mind as one of the first records where the arrangements were in odd time signatures and featuring great reharmonizations and all these written lines for the piano and the bass. That's continued all the way to the present. And he does a great job of kind of mashing together different songs that were written about the same American cities on this record. Fantastic arrangements, so creative, great record. I've got two more for you, and coincidentally these last two records that came out this year are two of my very favorites of the year. But before I share them to you, I'm going to plug my sticker business for just a minute. Bear with me. JazzStickers.com has the best jazz stickers in the universe. This one, Survival Jazz, depicts the post-apocalyptic battle between jazz musicians and zombies who are also jazz musicians. Great sticker to have in your sticker collection. Here's another one, Giant Steps. Get a look at that. We've got a giant leaving steps with the chord changes to giant steps. All right, so back to the regularly scheduled content. Hiromi, Sonic Wonderland, one of my favorite records of the year. Apparently, Hiromi and I were at Berklee at the same time. I don't recall knowing who she was then. I found out about her soon after we graduated when her first record came out, and it featured one of my favorite bass guitar players from Berklee, Mitch Cohn, who doesn't travel in jazz circles any longer, but he's a fantastic bass player, or at least he was at that time. And from there, Hiromi kept including great bass guitar players on every record she's ever made. It was Tony Gray, and then it was Anthony Jackson for a long time, and on this record, Hadrian Farode on the bass guitar, one of my favorites. And I was excited to check out the record for that reason. But what really surprised me about this record is Adam O'Farrell's trumpet playing and what that did for Hiromi's compositions. I've known that Hiromi was a gifted composer for a long time, but I think having her melodies played on the trumpet adds this human element, this grit, and the small flaws that every trumpet player has in their attacks and so forth, that just makes the music feel so visceral and human. And then you add in the great bass guitar playing and her great piano playing, and you're left with a great record, a lot of upbeat, fun tunes that just feel raw and joyful, and it's a fantastic record, one of my favorites of the year. And last, but certainly not least, if I can pick it up, is the second Ambrose Akamusiri record that I'll talk to you about today, Owl Song. This just barely made the list because it came out December 15th. It's only been out for a couple weeks. If I didn't make my list so late in the year, I wouldn't have been able to include this, but this is one of the best records of the year. What a gutsy choice to make a trio record with guitar, trumpet, guitar, and drums, and to write beautiful tunes for that unique instrumentation. It's got such a unique vibe. You would never mistake it for any jazz record that's been recorded ever. And to pick these particular musicians, Herlin Riley is mostly known as Wynton's drummer from the 90s and the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra drummer from the early 2000s. He's known as a really straight-ahead groove player, one of the best groove keepers among jazz drummers. And I think of Ambrose as somebody who plays a little bit more abstract, a little bit freer. And so I wouldn't have expected him to put this particular band together. And it just works so beautifully. I think that's one of Ambrose's skills, is that in addition to being the trumpet player of our generation and a beautiful composer, he also has this knack for being a visionary in terms of imagining what a unique instrumentation will feel and sound like, or at least I assume he does, because he keeps coming out with records with unique bands that end up being amazing records. I assume he has some ability to kind of predict that. Such a talented player, and I couldn't say enough great things about this record. I think if you were to pick out just a couple records from my list to buy, I think this should be one of them. And so that's it for my list. If you're new to this channel and you've listened this far, please consider subscribing and giving me a thumbs up. I would encourage you in particular to check out the original music that I write and present on this channel. It's the main reason I have my channel, is to present my original music. A lot of the songs that I record for this channel are just myself in this studio, multi-tracking myself on different instruments. But I also on occasion will bring in some of the best jazz musicians from here in Madison, Wisconsin to the studio and record music with a band, so that's on the channel as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to and supporting jazz music, and I will catch you in the next video. Happy New Year.